Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Invitation to a Conversation. Today, my guest is Shemeka Frazier Sorrells. Good morning, Miss Sorrells. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for accepting my invitation to a conversation and jumping on this morning to have a quick conversation with me. Um, can can you tell me, are you a native? Where were you born and raised?
I was born here in Brunswick, Georgia. Left here at the age of 8, very young age. Mother was retired military, but both maternal and paternal sides of my family are raised and bred here in Brunswick, Georgia. So this is home.
Okay. Before we get into the main conversation of the day of a better Glynn and how that was formulated out of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, I'd just like to give the people listening in and viewing just a background of what you do. You're a strategy consultant with KC Family Programs. Basically, in a short, brief synopsis, what do you do with that organization?
So Casey Family Programs is a national nonprofit. We are a philanthropic foundation that is focused on improving the child welfare system. We work in all across the nation and the Virgin Islands in Hawaii, and our work really is centered around supporting state agencies as well as nonprofit entities that work in and around the foster care system.
Okay, okay. And what is you're the foundress of Black Child Welfare? Can you tell us briefly
Yeah,
what that is?
yeah. Black Child Welfare is a collaborative of Black professionals that work within and around the child welfare system. And we form to be thought partners for each other, as well as emotional and wellness support as we navigate this work in systems, particularly for Black people when we are working in systems in these United States. It comes from a foundation that's rooted in anti-blackness and anti-slavery, and that work shows up. And so we we form to provide ourselves an additional level of support and to also inform the field around the needs of children and families, particularly Black children and families and professionals.
So, other than coming on invitation to a conversations to talk about this organization, how do people know about it? Do they have to be in this system, in the Family and Children Service system, to know about this organization?
Well, for Black child welfare, particularly, it's a closed group. It's not a sort of open organization. We come together to research and resource the field. We have a publication that's out now called "Navigating the Child Welfare System." And the impact of racism that was published in the Journal of Child Welfare. So folks can find that. Also, Casey Family Programs is a national organization. You can find that information on our website. It's www.kc.org.
Okay, all right. And well, thank you for that, and thank you for that. How did you choose that career choice? Briefly.
Oh gosh, I've been working in social services for over 20 years. The passion came from my family, particularly seeing issues that was plaguing my community. I'm an 80s baby, so I was born and grew up in the midst of the crack epidemic. That particularly hit our communities hard and certainly brought our children to the attention of the child welfare system. And so I was motivated to um, improve that system. And throughout my career, I've done direct services, working in case management, being a supervisor, writing state policies, then running nonprofits that served children in care, and then ultimately in this consulting role. So it's been a calling for as long as I can remember.
Well, hats off to you because that is something that is dear to every my heart, and I'm sure that a lot of other people are glad that this is in place for them to utilize. Well, going forward, we have about 30 more minutes, but I would like to jump into the conversation. We know today is the Ahmaud Arbery's day, and I would like to
Mhm.
delve into that with you. What were
Yeah.
you doing, and how did you hear about Ahmaud Arbery getting killed?
Yeah. So, probably a few months before his murder, my husband and I decided to invest in Brunswick. We had been visiting family, coming back and forth, and thought, we should, have a place here that we can come to, um, and it be an investment property. So, was in the process of securing a home here. Had gone through the closing and was actually en route to Brunswick, Georgia, to secure the keys to our property. And once we got here, we heard on the social media, we saw folks gathering along the highway. Wasn't
Mm,
quite sure what was happening, and come to find out, it was the day the video was released of his murder, that we were on our way to Brunswick to get our property.
mm. What was your first reaction when you saw that video? Did you see the video? What was your first reaction?
Yeah, so I saw portions of the video. I mean, I think I felt the pit in my stomach that a lot of Black people feel, um, when you see something like that. It was, for me, a reflection of my own family stories, growing up hearing their own account of experiences that they've had here in Brunswick and in Glynn County. And so, not to minimize him, but in his face, I mean, I saw my uncles, I saw my
Yes.
cousins. It was really clear to me. It was a visceral reaction that this was a manifestation of a lot of ills here in Brunswick and Glynn County, and I knew at that point that I needed to do something. I wasn't sure what that was in the moment, but I knew that I had an investment, a personal investment, because this is my home. This is where my family is from. But I also, at that point, had a financial investment, and I said, "This I cannot pay into a tax system that is treating
Mhm.
people that look like me here." So I knew that I was going to do something.
What's your thoughts about the trial?
Um, I think it was an indication of what our criminal justice system is. I mean, the jury selection, although the outcome was, I believe, was of justice, there certainly was some concerns when you had a jury that wasn't necessarily representative of the community, in terms of race. But I didn't. I sort of listened in on some of the trial. I was very intentional about how much I let that into my psyche, because it's very emotional and very stressful and very traumatic. But I am certainly happy, like a lot of folks here, that justice was served in that case. There's still more to be done, but
Mhm.
certainly, I'm grateful that his family got some justice and some peace, with his murders being
Mhm.
the
What,
resolved. Yeah.
how do you feel about the delay of the Jackie Johnson trial?
I think it's to be expected, right? I mean, you don't, a person that has run unopposed for the amount of years that she's been in that seat, the connections, I think it's to be expected. I hope that the delay means that they're being very intentional about putting forth the evidence necessary to bring justice.
Hmm. And you were the co-founder of a local nonprofit organization that formulated during the time of the protests and the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, called A Better
Yes.
Glynn. Can you tell me why it was established, and what is the mission and the goal of A Better Glynn?
Yeah. So, like many folks, the murder of Ahmaud catalyzed many people to move in different spaces. And so, just as I had mentioned earlier, wanting to be involved, wanting to do something, I connected with several family members, several groups in Brunswick, trying to understand what were here at that time and how I could plug in. And when I did that exploration, I didn't necessarily see my generation of people being represented, in a lot of those conversations. I knew I have a skill set that I could bring to the community. And at that time, we were in the midst of a pandemic. And so it was very difficult to sort of be in person and gather in the ways that some of the other organizations were. And so I just went to social media like many folks do and found some people that were really making some movements around revealing some of the things that were happening here in Glynn County. And so it was really organic in terms of how we came together. We met on a Sunday. None of us knew each other than just looking at each other on social media and said, "Hey, let's have a conversation." We entered into a conversation and we started to talk about not only the murder of Ahmaud, but more deeper and right, what were the conditions that existed here that could create the cover up? What was here that needed to be changed? And so, as a result of that, we decided to form an organization that was really going to center equity. As we thought it was a need at Glynn County to center equity for not only Black folk, but for many marginalized groups. And so our mission really is to identify and equip leaders to be equity driven to create solutions in Glynn County. And so what that means is that we're not just concerned with the criminal justice system, although that is enough to be a focus of an organization, but we're really concerned with sort of this apathy, what allows people to continue to live and move day to day and be mistreated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
we're trying to attack all of those things.
So when you came up with the title "A Better Glenn," what were some of your thoughts or ideals that that came together as a group, that y'all came together and said this will work? These are your thoughts and ideals to come together and formulate a nonprofit.
Yeah, I mean, we really just spent some time visioning like what could this place be and how could it be different for our children? How could it be different for our families? How could we leave this place better? And so that really was the term. Like we just want better. That's kind of how we concluded that conversation is we just want better. And someone said, "Oh, you know what? A better Glenn, that's it." Um, and it wasn't at that time. I want to be clear that it was about action. It was just like, where could we take some action?
Mm-hmm.
um, we had some critical elections that were happening at that time, so we knew we needed some action around voter engagement. Certainly we needed to educate the community around the practices of citizens arrests that folks were using. We had to educate the community on around the different ways racism shows up. And so we just decided that we weren't necessarily coming together to form an organization. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
know in that time, like, oh, this is going to be a nonprofit. It was, we need a name to gather and center ourselves around, and then we're going to do the work. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think, I believe in divine intervention and divine, we ultimately decided to form a nonprofit, but that was never our intentions. We just been about the work.
Mm-hmm. Um, how is a Better Glenn celebrating Black History Month? It is the today is across Georgia and some other states the Ahmaud Arbery Day. But
Yes.
besides that, how is a Better Glenn celebrating Black History Month?
Yeah, so for the past couple of weeks, we have been sponsoring a watch party of the Hulu docuseries 1619 Project. That's the publication that was written by Hannah Nicole Jones. We've been collaborating with the college, Coastal College, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Programming to do those watch parties. And I want to say to you that it is honoring Ahmaud in so many ways because we are bringing the community together to have conversations that we believe if these conversations had been had, or at least if some action had been taken around these conversations, maybe he would still be here with us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the docu series has had discussions. Our last panel we had was around race. Was the title of the docu series, and it talked about how race shows up in policies. Right, we know that race showed up, um, unfortunately, in Ahmaud's life, and was codified with his crime being deemed a hate crime. right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had a conversation about that, and not only a conversation, but talking about what are solutions. How could this place be different now that we know what we know? So we don't like to promote that we are doing things um, just in the name of a mod. We respect him, we center him. But what we are trying to do, or not, but and what we are trying to do is to really change the conditions of this community. And so we don't have another name that we have to add to the list of a mod.
Hmm. And going back to one of the things I was asking you about, how you felt about that the killing of Ahmaud Arbery. What sometimes when you look at things or you hear things like that, it always brings back the memory of how it used to be. The night
Yeah.
riders, that was they were called the night riders before they were called the Ku Klux Klan. And they
Yeah.
would protect the perimeter of the block where they lived or the area where they lived. And anytime they saw a black person, when dusk fell, got dark, they never made it back home, whether you were
Mhm.
man, woman, or child. And so one of the and I, and some of the conversations that need to be had that's creeping up is some people want to forget about racism. Some people don't want to admit that their forefathers or parents or grandparents were part of the hate crimes against black people or whatever. And so this is another each generation, we have to tread of how we're going to approach them with that situation. Because like some of them say, well, that was my forefathers, I don't have nothing to do. But you're taught, each generation teach their
Mhm.
generation about life, of how it was when they were living. What you think
Mhm.
about that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that racism is embedded in systems and is embedded in inherent behaviors that people don't may not necessarily see or know how to call out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say specifically in Brunswick, Georgia, and Glynn County, one of the things that we talked about in our watch party was this the child mortality rate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in Glynn County, we are much higher in the nation for um, child mortality. Um, and we are also and Glynn County is even higher than the rate in Georgia. And so we talked about what conditions that are created in a black woman who's carrying a baby that could lead to mortality. If keep all things even, there's no medical reason as to why mortality rates are higher for black children than they are for white children. But we know that there are conditions here in Glynn County that create stress upon a
Mm-hmm.
woman's body, particularly a black woman's body, that is inherent racism. Some of that stress is the way in which they live. They live in environments that are substandard. They are more than likely living in a home that is full of mold and other environmental toxins. They are more than likely working a hourly job where they don't have adequate health care, they don't have adequate time off. They are more than likely making under the income rate. I think the median income for Brunswick is less than 30,000 a year. And so those systems and the way in which women live here, black women in particular, as it relates to this conversation, is about embedded racism. If one
Systematic racism. Mm-hmm.
systematic racism, right? And so people don't necessarily know how to call that out. And so our goal is to educate and to talk about the way in which race does impact our outcomes. It doesn't mean that like we're not calling people racist, right? It's not,
Right.
you know, but we are all participating in systems that are racist systems. And so once we know what's the saying, when you know better, you do better. That's how racism shows up. So to answer your question, you have to educate. It shows up, and it's not just people calling, you know, negative names. It's embedded in ways that we don't necessarily see or know how to speak to.
Yeah, and if you are the person or the culture or the nationality or the race group that is the being oppressed by the systematic racism, then we see it, we know when it's coming, and we hear it. So the question that is always
That's right.
asked is, why is race always the first question? Well, we see it, we know it, we feel it, and it comes in many different forms, words, shapes,
That's right.
and in yes. So what is next for Miss
That's right.
Sorrells?
I don't. um, that's a huge question. I think at this point, I am just wanting to cultivate the communities that I am in, um, cultivate those in ways that we have impact. The focus is lasered focused in that way, because I refuse to have my child experience the same lifestyle that her great grandparents, great aunts, great uncles experience here. So I am centered in making sure that we have a community that thrives and centers the needs of the marginalized.
Hmm. Who inspires you?
Oh gosh, so many. Personally, I'll say my grandmother, both of my grandmothers, Claudia May Hobbs and Essie Mae Lawrence, both are my inspiration. They both were very hardworking women, took care of their children and their families, and also were impacted by the very things that we're trying to resolve. My grandmother worked, I won't name the organization, folks could probably figure it out. There's not too many main employers here, but she worked for an organization for over 25 plus years, and still wasn't making a livable wage.
Hmm.
So I, that's certainly my inspiration. And then historically, many women, Audre Lorde, Fannie Lou Hamer, um,
Hmm.
so many that inspire me. Harriet Tubman.
Mm. Yes, the list goes on and on.
Yes, yes,
Hmm.
yes.
Hmm. What is your favorite scripture, phrase, or testimony that keeps you grounded?
Oh gosh. So, I don't know if it's sort of a mantra. And so at times when I get overwhelmed by the amount of work or the amount of things that I am involved in, I always try to center myself and say like who are you? Meaning, I always say like who number one, who am I? I'm not here to resolve everything. I am
Hmm.
not God, right? So that centers me when I say who am I? I am God, and I am God is within me, and that means that ultimately God is in control. I am not.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so that's one thing for sure that centers me. That's what comes to mind as of right now.
Hmm. So, what is your wisdom or advice to people who, I think serving your community is a way of giving back? A lot of people don't find it volunteering in the community as something they should do because you're not getting paid for it. But to help somebody else and share that wisdom, I think that's very important. So, what is your wisdom or advice to somebody who sees something happening in their community or across the world that wants to seek a nonprofit organization or be part of a cause?
Yeah, I think the thing that drives me is that anytime I am looking to resolve something, more than likely, I'm not the only person that have thought about that. And so, what that means is that there are a community of people who are wanting to do something, maybe don't know where to start, maybe don't have the resources, and so find your group, find the folks, and that really just starts with having conversations. But find people that are like minded, because we are more powerful together. So I believe that. I believe that we have to have collaborative solutions. That's my other wisdom is that none of us own this work alone. None of us own the accomplishments alone. None of us own the solutions alone. And so we need to collaborate and we need to work together. We are truly more powerful together. And so find those folks and do the work. The other piece I would just challenge when people say, they're not getting paid. I think we need to rethink, or reshape how we think about revenue and benefit. everything is not driven monetarily. And so
Mhm.
what you pour in is what you get out. And so if you desire to live in a different situation, or you desire to experience a different situation, then it's not enough to just sit back and talk about it. You need to be a part of it. And the benefit is much, I believe, outweighs at times this dollar value that we place on things.
Mhm. Can you tell everybody how they can donate to a Better Glenn?
Yeah, so our website is abetterglen.org, and we have a button there that has donate, and you can do that. If you want to give of your time, we have several events that we post on our Facebook page and on our Instagram that you can volunteer to be a part of and attend. So yeah, all the information you can find on our website and social media is a Better Glen.
Okay. Drop me that line and I'll add it to the live chat.
Okay,
To and it's just send it to me in the comments. Thank you, Miss Sorrells, for coming on this day, the Ahmaud Arbery Day, and also in celebration of Black History Month. Glad to know you. Glad you can
glad
fit
to
me
know
in
you.
your time today. And you continue to have a blessed day.
Yes, ma'am. You too. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.